When was the last time you played with your partner?
Like Monopoly?
No, I'm talking goofing around.
Maybe.
Having a good time and really just enjoying each other.
Charades.
Like maybe you did in dating. Or maybe you've, at this point, compartmentalized play as only something you do with your children. We're going to talk about the importance of play in your most intimate relationship.
Mama Says Namaste. Mama Says Namaste.
Making a family can be easy and fun.
Oh yeah, but raising a family can be a whole different story.
From spouses to kids to the crazy daily grind, life often directs us away from connection and more into reactive chaos.
If you're tired of that cycle and are seeking something beyond the picket fence blues, this is the show for you.
I'm Ashley.
And I'm Nathan.
And we're here to take you from chaos to clarity by bringing awareness and intention into your home, not waiting for one day, and highlighting how
the uniqueness in each of us strengthens all of us.
Take a deep breath in and let's start a brand new day. With Mama Says Namaste.
When was the last time we had a good time, Ashley? And had fun and just laughed?
I don't know, this morning.
There you go. Good answer.
But how often is that the case? When was the last time you just had a good time with your loved one and with your partner and just cut up and enjoyed each other's presence? Sometimes I think we box our play into, we play with the children and it looks a certain way. And we sometimes lose some of that, especially when it comes to our most intimate relationship. And as we talk about these relationships, this month we're talking about our marriage or our partnership, but it's not just for that. The reason why we go there is because when you do the hard work to do everything you can to foster and support and create that relationship, that's your toolkit for every other interaction. That's your toolkit for dealing with anybody else, because there's nobody else in the world that you are necessarily going to be interacting with to the same depth and vulnerability that you are with that significant other. So us having a marriage-focused theme is not just for married people. If you're not, take this to whatever your next closest relationship is and look at what tools can you bring to make that relationship so powerful that it becomes your barometer for the rest of your relationships. That's what we want to do, and that's why we focus so much on marriage, because I recognize in our household, my relationship with Nathan is top priority. Because every aspect of what I pour into, what I'm willing to show up for, and how I'm willing to connect in that relationship is the epitome of all the tools in my toolkit. So as we look at play and how we add play into our relationship, we talk about that when we first started the podcast. Actually, the reason Nathan came on as a guest, as a co-host,
was to play.
Well, we had the focus on marriage, and we titled it Laughter, Humble Pie, and Lots of Sex. And I thought, well, I can't have this conversation without Nathan, and just my perspective. I wanted to share his too. And you never got off. You stayed and did podcasts with me ever since.
There you go. Never left Mama Says Namaste.
Yep.
But, I think getting back to the play piece, that's always been an aspect of... it's just a great way to get back to the relationship core. A lot of times you kind of create a sense of play or connection when you're dating, and life can get serious and busy, and you forget to do that sometimes. That's why, I love what your parents do where they have date night. It's just like structured in so that it happens. That's one great way of making sure that you're building in, it's not so much play, but sometimes it's building in time for play.
Yeah. Well, and we just actually gave an open house call to the 48 Days community on creating a life you don't want to escape from. And we talked on there about prioritizing things, and what gets on the schedule gets done. And how often do we schedule the personal Schedule those times to recharge, to play, to have downtime. And we often don't. We figure we'll fit them in with everything else, and we don't. What gets scheduled is what gets the focus.
Yeah. And if you're not, scheduling in time with your loved one where there's no phones and you just have a little moment to hang out for 20, 30 minutes, then when is it going to happen if you don't schedule it in?
Right.
If you wait for it to spontaneously happen, boy, you got a lot of competition with that handsome phone.
Right. The phones can be such a filler for the downtime where we used to maybe just hang out and flirt with one another.
Yeah.
Like, when have you flirted with your spouse? When have you spent the time to just, when we talk about play is supportive play. That means any kind of play that is teasing or tearing someone down doesn't work. Any kind of play that is not in the same avenue. For example, Nathan and me going mountain biking together because it's a little bit terrifying for me and I can't keep up with him and it's not really fun for me. So that's not really the best option for us to play together.
Yeah.
So we go hiking instead, and we'll do some things like that where we have fun on
or
something
me
that's
going
more our
shopping
level.
with you to look at a bunch of knickknacks that we're never going to bring into our house. And
Exactly.
just to touch them to see how soft they are.
I will leave you at home and take a daughter.
There you go. Perfect. I'll go mountain biking.
Right. It's not forcing each other into different roles. It's looking for how can we find joy together. And that's really what we want to do, is we want to look for opportunities to create those joy sparks of fun that recharge us as a couple. And we recognize the value of adding laughter into our relationship. And so we want to do things that lighten things up and allow us to enjoy each other. We're not enduring our relationship. We're not tolerating our relationship. We're intentionally enjoying this thing we have created together.
Well, I think that's the first step, is you have to intentionally lighten up. You got to start to relax and just not to take things so seriously. And that alone, humor is a great way to bridge the gap between, when you're trying to figure out how you're going to be in these situations that are going to come up in life that'll test you. But humor and having a light heart about things and looking at the positive first, getting in the habit of doing that is a great way of just adjusting the attitude. Because, sometimes I remember back when I was in high school when feeling bad looked good. And so you just that becomes your MO. And eventually you get tired of that whole feeling bad, looking good kind of thing, and then move on.
Yeah. And I mean, we want to engage in a relationship that has that lightheartedness, and that is a lighthearted, easy relationship for us.
But
and
you have to practice doing that.
Right.
Sometimes if your MO is to be grumpy, well then, it's really hard to be grumpy and lighthearted at the same time. You can pull it off. People can pull it off.
Well, I remember, when we first got married, and in my desire for the quote unquote right relationship, it's going to look this certain way. It's going to be prim and proper, and it's going to be all of this stuff. And you thought it was great to say things to get a reaction out of me.
Yes, I did.
And you did.
Past tense.
Right. You still do. And we both had to learn how to do that in a way that created the play and the laughter versus the tension. Because you would say something to get a reaction out of me, and I would get my panties in a wad, and I would be so offended or frustrated or agitated about what it is you said. And so I took it all personally, and I took it as an offense to me, and how dare you? And we both, we both had to step back and look at, okay, what's our goal in this?
Yeah.
Your goal was to lighten things up. Yeah. And my goal was to, remember how to keep things light, and that's offensive, and I don't like that. Yeah. And so we both had to give a little bit and learn how can we play in a way that really is fun for both of us.
Right. And can also be supportive in our struggles. Sometimes that play is also can, when we're challenged or pushing through adversity, that play can kind of remind us to keep going and push through some of those challenges that we have. Just that lighthearted approach is so valuable in a relationship to, keep kind of the smug frustration out, because it's easy, like you said, it's easy to take things personally.
Yeah, and get offended by everything. And it creates a lot of unnecessary drama in a relationship.
Yeah. Unless you think playing with drama is fun. And then
I really put the kibosh on mind games and drama in a relationship. It does not serve a relationship well at all. And the more we're willing to set the drama aside, the more we create a relationship that lasts. I'm not looking for a Hollywood relationship, and I'm not looking for a highly volatile relationship. I'm looking for a relationship with two people that are mature enough to recognize the goal of being together over the drama of a scenario. I know that when you add to your play account, your bank account of playtime, so when you have added a lot of times of really just enjoying time with your spouse, and you have and there's been a lot of interaction and downtime, you're working with a full bank. You're working with the full account, where when something difficult comes up or when there is an issue that you need to work on, you can kind of bring from those reserves of, hey, remember this good feeling, remember this good time, and how can we get to that? And it's a lot harder to move through the hard times when you don't have any good times to compare it to, and you're not remembering those. And so the more you can foster those good times, the better. And I think about that, like us dealing with the frustrations of my lack of time management in the house. And in order for us to really handle the time management issue that we were having, play was a big part of this in a lot of different ways. Number one, it was you calling me out on my workaholism and just inviting me to play, inviting me to experience downtime with you. And that made a big difference with me understanding what that felt like.
Oh, such a good influence on you.
Yeah. And so, inviting into just resting, relaxing, playing and acting silly and being, having fun with you was a big part of it. And so then when we, once I experienced it, I knew what it was I was going toward and what it was that I wanted to create. Then it's okay, how can we create some boundaries so I can support you in that? And that's when you did the reminder on my calendar, at 3:30 every day, start cooking hot stuff. And, it was a little, flirtatious, fun, and was done with the intent of support and encouragement, not of attack or belittling or managing. And in that arena, it ended up being something that, helped me to change my habits and created better time management skills, because I recognized the value of the play and the downtimes together.
Well, a lot of times I think play and some of our challenges are based and just rooted in habits. We have our own habits on how we deal with things, like how we do dishes or how we put toilet paper in the bathroom. And those habits, we bring those together into a relationship. And as we're dating, we kind of create these habits that can sometimes be pretty consistent through a relationship. And some of these habits that we have when we're dating, it's okay to set down and build new habits. I think we get so attached sometimes to the habits of our relationship that we're scared to go and create new habits and explore new ways of connecting with each other, rather than the old, I'm going to break you down, then you break me down, and then I say something that's a little edgy, and then I get mad and quiet, and then we make up, and we play that cycle, 3 times a month. Instead of doing that, and that's what I'm always looking for, is those cycles, those same conversations of like, we've been here before. Once you've had that moment, that's when there's something that you can do to control and, shift yourself out of that scenario and just see how you can behave differently this time. That's kind of what I do.
So what are some examples that you can think of how we have played, dating versus first years versus now?
I think when we were dating, we were always trying to fish each other's opinions and values out of each other through debate. And so that
we played a lot by debate.
Yes.
And we had to learn how to do it without offending each other, but or just
old
fighting.
Old softball Nathan over here got his feelings hurt too often, so we had to change the rules. But
no, but we learned how to talk to each other in another way, because to that point, what I thought was play, you could feel like it was attack. And so much of that has to do with understanding who we are. And so the first few years of us dating and getting married were a lot of us also figuring out our differences. And that oftentimes came out in play, and it could go really negative, or we could laugh about it and learn from it. And that's what we chose to do.
And so those were there when you hit those little crossroads of, it can go one reaction or the other. Those are those things that I think as you get older in a relationship, you start to decide it's not worth the agony of going down this way. I'm going to try this way. And so you kind of shift and adjust out of, what you've done. I mean, that's one thing, the jumping out and scaring you is one thing that I've stopped doing.
Yeah.
I would say we would push each other and tease each other on hikes, or I would do that to get you to, go over a hard section when, you didn't want to.
It kind of brings into light again, though, understanding personality styles, because part of play is figuring out what motivates the other person, what the motivators are. And so, you figured out that a challenge was important to me. And so if you could give it to me in the light of a challenge, that was fun for me. That's not going to be for everybody, but that was you figuring out more about who I was and how we could work together.
Yeah. And it's just sometimes I can see how in relationships, and I've overheard, as we've hiked on trails and listened to other families, I've overheard the jeering and the teasing, and how, that can become just the status quo. And that's okay. As long as it's all in good fun, it can be, very helpful and supportive.
But pay attention to what your good fun is and what words you're using, because are those words that are good fun, or if they were written down somewhere and some stranger said them to you, would it hurt you?
Well, you end up creating an environment of fear of failure versus kind of being hungry and curious to grow. And so, if you're always afraid of getting that jeering and looking bad, you're more likely to stay in the stuff that you really know. You're not going to really try stuff that's gonna make you look bad. But if you're in an environment that's encouraging, more likely than not, you're willing to test yourself a little bit, and that can lead you to some wonderful places. That's how play can be so helpful and valuable. Is just play is it's not so much it's almost like a mood in a lot of ways. We kind of look for, like something to stimulate that mood, like, soccer or, games and barbecues in the backyard. Like, we always try to create an environment and do things that will create a mood and an attitude of play. But ultimately, that's kind of what we're seeking. Like, you can play a really boring soccer game where it's like, this just stinks. The energy isn't here. Not everybody's, playing as hard. And, you've played those games where you've tried to recreate a moment, and it just does, you know what I'm talking about? And it just doesn't
It's not
happen.
about recreating the moment. It's about being in the moment that you are.
Right,
and finding what joy you can find in it.
Play is an energy, is what I'm trying to say. It's not kind of an action in a way. I think sometimes we can get lost in if I give you flowers, then you know that I'm sorry. Well, that action doesn't change the feelings that are going on, so, it's kind of that, I think that we can get wrapped up in, I played with him. I sat down and played Monopoly with the kid. What else do I need to do to be a dad? Well,
playing is a lot
you need
of
to
the
play with it, it's
showing up and
being vulnerable.
Yeah, showing up and being vulnerable and saying, hey, I'm willing to find some joy with you right now. What do you want to do?
Yeah.
What does that look like?
We'll laugh at each other's successes and each other's failures, and move on. It's not anything personal, and I think that's a great practice in humanity, because a lot of times we do kind of get stuck in these little ruts of, it's easier to complain about the world than appreciate it.
Mm-hmm. I share the same video over and over again on how to not take things personally. And I'll share it in the blog post again this week.
So you can go to that.
And it's a great TED Talk that just talks about, how to not take things personally, because most of the time it's more about the other person and where they're at than what it is you. So you have to take into account where they are. And then secondly, sometimes there's value in learning how you are perceived by others. Because it's not just about, just follow what your intentions are and everything's great. If your actions are not matching that up, it can go across, it can really backfire on you. So, so another big part of play is simply just recognizing, I have found that in order to really add more play to my life, I have to let go of the drama. I have to let go of the frustrations and the feelings that aren't serving me well. And so often, we can take life really seriously, and we can hold on to every transgression and everything that's going wrong. And so my question is, how is that helping you? Mm-hmm. What is that adding in your life to hold on to this, this pain, this resentment, this anger, this frustration, this grudge? What is it adding to your life? How much fun is it to carry it? How heavy has it gotten at this point? How much has it impacted your forward-moving relationships? Drama and trauma and pain, and these are things that we can sit in. And life is not a sitting activity. It really is a forward-moving motion, and it will continue to move forward even if you are sitting on your butt for 10 years. Mm-hmm. You're not going to last much longer unless you're active. With life, we have to look for how are we going to move forward, and the harder we hold on to our frustrations, the more we're limited for where we can go. And that gap gets bigger and bigger the older we get, and the more we're holding on to, the pain of our childhood in our 40s and 50s. When is enough? When is your time to look for what joy you can create versus what pain you've lived through?
Well, when do you give your, that child kind of inside of you permission to, let go of holding that tension, that pressure, and trying to protect you from that, and give them permission to play and be free of some of that? And I think we get stuck. I mean, I know I did, sort of in that masculine view of, well, my play days are over. It's time to be a man and do life. We don't have a whole lot of room for play. And that's a mindset. That's a belief that I believed for a little while, but having given myself permission to explore the other side of that, it's nothing more than that. It's just a belief, and a lot of times an excuse to hide away from life and the opportunities to come up. Because being playful and being vulnerable, especially with the ones that you love, if you don't make, I think one of the biggest things that's important is just making time for that. Making sure that you've blended in space for, those opportunities for play to occur, because they're to me a really important ingredient in a healthy relationship. Because if we're all serious all the time, oh my goodness, it can be very draining.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So think about ways to add in more laughter and more fun into your relationship. How are you going to play this week with your partner? What does that look like? Maybe it's, pulling up a thing of jokes and reading jokes back
Yeah,
and forth
we
to
do
each
that.
other. We've
That's
done that
fun.
before.
A fast-paced game is fun.
Fast-paced game and getting all frazzled and laughing about it when it's not about the competition, but it's the joy of the game. What else are some things that we have done in play? I mean, it's accomplishing things together, like us going on a hike and us exploring new places together can be elements of it. And sometimes it's just, taking a break and sitting outside and not doing anything, just chilling with each other.
Well, and I was going to say, just trying anything new, going to anywhere new can bring that sense of joy and play back into your experience.
And a common ground of vulnerability, because it's new for both of you.
Yeah. And so, like, we would, and that can be any world of, you can go to, we try a different restaurant from a different country every week, or go to a different church every week, or all sorts of different things you can do to just invite new experiences in your life, and see what conversations come out of that, because that's usually what's fun and playful, is you start to have these conversations, and you might learn something about each other that you never knew.
Well, and that kind of goes into how much of when we're dating, we're getting to know each other. And, when we're committed to one another, we still have the opportunity to get to know each other. And it's hard
you just stay the same and keep making money and we'll be fine. Right.
Well, it's hard to continue to know each other to get to know each other if one of you stops growing. So looking for growth opportunities together where you're both, learning and figuring things out can be really beautiful.
Or stops being vulnerable. It's growing or being vulnerable, I think, are two areas that can limit or put a real roadblock in the pursuit towards, because, playfulness takes two. Mm-hmm. It's not usually a single jam.
No, it's
really
not very
get excited
fun.
About solitaire.
It's not very fun when, it's just you and I'm not quite getting the joke. It's not a fun time for either. So look for those opportunities to add some new discovery, add some fun, and some things that are kind of equal playing ground for both of you, or new material, and just experiment with lightening things up. Think back to when you first met this person, and what elements of that initial attraction and that play and that flirtation that you did. What were those, and what might you want to bring back? And what are you willing to let go of in the process to focus on what you want to create now? Not any kind of frustration over the past, simply looking at the past as your lessons to give you the toolkit to create what it is you want to create moving forward. And the more we do that, we're not only impacting just that most intimate relationship. We're getting those tools and we're learning to understand for every relationship so that we can celebrate how
the uniqueness in each of us strengthens all of us. Namaste. Almost got me on that one.
3. I put the rising sun already on the run. Mama says namaste. Life is a tangled mess, and you don't have to stress. Mama says namaste. 'Cause today I will stand up and be all the change that I want to see in this world. Boys and girls, you gotta have to stand up to be free. Namaste in your home. Take a deep breath in and let's start a brand new day. With Mama Says Namaste.